Ladies and gents, I hope you're keeping well. So in this video, and before you ask, yes, I have strategically set up the camera for the background because I think it's beautiful. It looks the part. Currently in downtown Dubai. The sun is just about to set. I'm in between calls. I'm conducting interviews for the new company that I've set up, the one that I've mentioned in some of the previous videos, that I set up a company in September of this year, 2025, to use as a case study for some of the different strategies and methods that I teach inside of the delegation bootcamp program. So rather than me just creating kind of mundane training modules and showing you what I've done in the past and helping you with your business, I've set up this company to apply these strategies and these systems to show you everything in action, that I practice what I preach. So today I was actually conducting interviews to hire more staff for that company. So the company is growing quite well. It's actually growing better than I thought it would, faster than I thought it would. So we had to pull back a little bit. Now that business is grown pretty much 100% on paid advertising. So my past experience, my first company that was successful as such, was an advertising and marketing agency. I still have that today, and I have a fantastic team in place. We have a team of, I think we've about 11 people, 12 people in that business, combination of full-time and remote staff. So that business pretty much runs without me. I still keep my finger on the pulse. I've systemized it, built a fantastic team. We have every week we get the financial dashboard. I receive the financial dashboard and the operations dashboard. So I can see with a glance 5 minutes of a Monday or a Tuesday if that business is performing as it should. Anyhow, I'm gone off track a little bit. So basically what I've learned over the years through advertising and building that business, I've applied to other businesses. So I've used those skills to build this new company. Now it's not rocket science. Basically what I've done was I set up this new company that I'm using as a case study, which is in a sector or an industry where I have no experience in. I'm not an expert in that field as such. It's not a business where I can just jump in and get on the tools and fix stuff and provide the service. So what I've done is set up the brand, set up the limited company, the bank accounts, all the bits and bobs that go with it, packaged together our offer, dialed in our target market, and I simply plugged in the advertising agency to that business. So we basically sent the information over to the agency, said, look, this is the type of client you want to attract, this is the service that we're offering. Press play on that, and that drives in a certain amount of leads every day and every week. So we now know that if we spend X, it's going to bring in X amount of leads. And then we also track from that amount of leads that we bring in based on our conversion rate, the sales reps conversion rate. We know that out of X amount of leads that come in, we generally close X amount of new customers. So tracking all of that data is going to tell you your cost per lead, your cost per customer, and then you're also going to want to track your LTV, your lifetime value of a customer. So this goes down to, I suppose it pushes on the importance of systemizing a business and documenting everything. And, you know, having structure in place in a business is a combination of things. So having someone there managing the marketing end of things, so you could simply have a glance and say, all right, we're on track. This is how much it costs to bring in a new customer. This is the lifetime value of one customer. It's how long they stay with the company, if it's a recurring revenue model or if it's a once-off project model. Regardless of what it is, you should be tracking these metrics. You should know your costs. You also need to know your overheads, your expenses. So having a bookkeeper in place is vital. It's one of the easiest hires that you can make and one of the most valuable. Your bookkeeper can take care of payroll. They can provide you with a monthly profit and loss, a monthly cash flow, because there's so many business owners. And I used to be the same back in the day when my businesses lacked structure and systems and I didn't have a bookkeeper or a team. So many of the guys that come to me and ultimately that join the delegation bootcamp program, they don't have bookkeepers in place. They might have somebody coming in on a Friday and doing 2-3 hours for cash. They might have a girl in the office who does the sales calls, admin, and does a bit of bookkeeping, but she's not a bookkeeper. She just really know what she's at. When I ask them questions like, you know, what's your annual revenue? What's your gross profit margin? What's your net profit margin? You know, what's your operating costs? They don't know. They haven't got a clue. It's crazy, guys. If you don't know your numbers, you're absolutely winging it. It's the same with your operations. If your business is heavily dependent on you or heavily dependent on any one person within your business, if something happens to you or something happens to one of those people within the business, like what do you think is going to happen to the business? Of course, if something happens to you and everything within the business filters through you, if you get sick or if you get injured or if you want to take some time off, which you probably can't because the business lacks structure and it lacks systems, it's going to fall apart. But it's the same for the team members that you have within your business. Reducing key person risk. So making sure that the team members that you have in place, regardless of how fantastic they are, if everything is just inside their head, if something happens to them, if they get a better offer from a different company and they leave, it's going to be a bit of a pain in the backside for you and for your business to try and replace them. Okay. So you want to set your business up in a way that you want to build it as an owner independent asset and reduce key person risk. And how do we do this? We put structure in place, we put systems in place. What does that mean? I hear some of you asking. Okay. Look, it's not a silly question. I didn't know what it meant. Putting structure and systems in place can mean a couple of different things, and it depends on the business that you have and the sector that you're in. Some of the basic structures that you can put in place are: start with the simple things. Start by putting a company organizational chart in place so you can get a visual on the company. Okay, we can see the hierarchy and the team layout. Who's the owner, who's the CEO, who's the general manager. So you have that laid out across the management level. So all of the guys that I work with, I provide you with templates on all of this. Everything from company organizational charts, role profile templates, SOP templates, KPI dashboard templates, delegation frameworks, decision-making matrix, the whole lot. And if you don't know what any of this means, reach out. We can get you into the program. We can show you how it works. Not only do I provide the guys with these templates, but I also provide you with trainings on what they are, how to customize and tailor them for your business, how to implement them, and how to actually make them work. Because it's one thing putting structure to your business and putting systems in place, but if the team that you have in place don't take ownership, don't hold themselves accountable, the systems are not going to be utilized. So there's different ways of doing that by having certain incentives in place, having KPIs in place are a big one. But start with the simple stuff. Start by putting a company organizational chart in place and very simply documenting out each department, who's responsible for what. For each team member within the business, you're going to want to have a role profile, which what we do is on the company org chart, we have that linked to it. So when you click on their name, it opens up the role profile for that person who is in charge of that role. What is a role profile? It's basically kind of a job description. It's the blueprint on how to carry out that role. If part of that person's responsibility is to answer the phone when it rings or to send out quotations or whatever it might be, you're going to list out each of those tasks on their role profile. Beside each of those tasks, you're going to have a link to what we call an SOP. Okay. What is an SOP? It's basically just a document. It's a blueprint on how to carry out the task. So if the role profile is the blueprint on how to carry out the role, the SOP is the blueprint on how to carry out each of the individual tasks and responsibilities within that role, if that makes sense. An SOP, there's many different platforms you can use. It's very easy to overcomplicate all this stuff, guys. What I would say to you is there's a lot of softwares. If you do a YouTube search for it, there's a million different softwares and different subscriptions and systems and stuff that you can subscribe to. Keep it basic. Google Sheets, Google Drive, Google Docs, okay? An SOP can be made up of many different things. So it depends on the role. Let's give two examples. So one I always go back to is that if you're a car detailing company, and let's say one of the services you provide is ceramic coatings on cars. If you're currently doing that yourself and you want to delegate that to somebody else, you're going to sit down and create an SOP. So what's step one? When a new car comes in, what's the first thing you do? Do you log it on a system? Do you log the date, the owner, the service that they're paying for? Do you make sure that it's reconciled with the bookkeeper to make sure that they've paid, or if they haven't paid, or if they paid a deposit, whatever that might be? Then what's the next step? Well, you bring the car over into Bay 3. And once you have the car in Bay 3, well, then you need XYZ product. Okay. And then beside that, you might have a link to another sub SOP that says, right, here is the materials that you need to carry out this task. Here's how to mix those materials so that you get the percentages right, whatever it might be. And then within that SOP, you might have some videos. So you might actually just get your phone, a video like this, and record you applying the polish. This is step one. This is the cloth that you use. This is the hose that you use. You do this before you do that. After you do that, you do this. And then there's a checklist to make sure that you do it in order. If you want, you can print out physical checklists, or you can have digital checklists. So what we usually advise is to get your team set up with your systems. You're going to have an internal communication system, such as maybe Slack.com or whatever. All of your internal communication is in there. If it's project based, you set up a new project for each client project. All of your team members have access to that. If there's certain tools, checklists, or templates that or softwares that your team are using to carry out the work, make sure they have access to that. So digital checklists, physical paper checklists, whatever suits your business, tweak it to work. On the other side of things, sorry, actually, just to finish off on that, once you've recorded these kind of training videos on how to apply the ceramic coating to a car, and you've all these different steps laid out on this document, you upload that and you host it into a centralized system. So everything's centralized, everything's documented, so that, let's say you scale your business, you start to invest in some marketing or advertising, and now you can take in twice the amount of vehicles for ceramic coating. You're going to need to hire in another team member. But this team member is essentially going to be carrying out the same work as the first guy. So you already have the role profile for that. You already have the SOP on how to carry out those tasks. So you just go through the hiring process, find somebody who's a good fit for your company, who's a good fit for the culture, good fit for your values, plug them in. They're going to have access to all the training, all the SOPs, everything that they need. And it's going to make the process of building your team, if you don't have all of this, it might take a couple of months and they're going to make a lot of mistakes. Whereas if you have all of this in place, you could reduce that down to maybe a couple of days to train somebody new in. So it's much more efficient. On the other side of that, you might be providing a remote service. Maybe you've got an accountancy firm and you want to hire in a trainee accountant, and they're going to be taking over payroll, and they're going to be taking over end of year returns or VAT returns, whatever it might be. So that type of stuff is carried out online. So what you'll do then is very similar to the first example. Everything is centralized. You're using a very simple setup to create the role profiles and the SOPs and so on. But rather than having to actually get a physical camera or using your phone to record, like I said, the video of applying the ceramic coating, sorry, forgot the word I was looking for, the ceramic coating to the car, what you can do is you can use tools like Loom or screen records and record your screen. Here's how to file a VAT return. Log into to ROS, get the client's XYZ details, input ABC, whatever it might be. Once you've done that, click this button, then go over to this page and click this. Make that screen recording, attach a link of that screen recording to the SOP, and make sure you have all the steps laid out so you have a digital checklist for it. So then if you need to hire in someone else to do that role down the line, the person that you have in leaves, it's going to be very easy to plug people into that business. And guys, I learned all of this stuff the hard way. I remember when I first started out with the advertising business, which I mentioned at the start, there was no structure, there was no systems. And a big mistake that I made was that I got to a certain stage where I realized that, right, I am the bottleneck within the business. I need to start building a team and hiring people in. So I did that. But what I soon realized was that I put the cart before the horse. What I mean by that is, if you start bringing a team in before you have structure in place, you're just spreading the chaos across more people. And I done that. I made that mistake. I built a team. I spread the chaos across more people. Roles were not clearly defined. We had no KPIs, no SOPs. Everyone had to keep coming back to me. How do I do this? Or this is after happening. How do I solve this problem? Or what do I do when this happens type thing? As well as that, having KPIs. So a KPI is basically a metric that shows you, right, is that department or that role or that task being carried out to the standard that it should or not? And we have what we call a KPI dashboard. It's a template that I share with everyone inside of the Delegation Bootcamp program. And it shows you'll have KPIs for each department or maybe for each team member that they have to hit, maybe on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Again, it's going to depend on your business. And what you can do is, once you have your KPIs set out, you can color code them. So you might have someone like a VA come in and update that, or maybe your manager might do that for the team that you have in place. And your manager or you might be able to come in once a week, have a quick glance and see, right, what KPIs are being hit, what KPIs are not being hit. And we have it all color coded. So if everything's on track and the KPIs are being hit, it shows up in green. It looks lovely. If you see green, you know, right, things are running as they should. We don't need to worry about that team member or that department. But if you see something's in red, you might see, right, well, you know, the salesperson is supposed to be closing 5 new accounts per week. but last week they only closed one, so the KPI will come up in red. Well, then you or your manager that you have in place will know, right, I need to speak to the sales rep because they're in charge of that role. That KPI is assigned to them, they're responsible for it. So then they go and speak to them. That's how you're going to identify these bottlenecks before they become major problems. The sales rep might tell the manager or might tell you as the owner, well, look, everything was on track, but the marketing department, who generally bring in 100 leads a week, they only brought in 20 leads last week. So now now your manager will know who to go and speak to. It's common sense. When you have all this in place, it's running your business on easy mode. The process of getting from where you're at right now, where your business is just chaos, everything filters through you, there's no structure, there's no systems, and the team that you have in place, if you have a team, they have to be micromanaged. Okay, that's not sustainable for anybody. It's not sustainable for the business. You won't be able to scale the business past a certain point, but also for you, it's not sustainable because you only have so much time in a day. You only have so much mental bandwidth before you burn out. You need to protect your time and your energy and your mental bandwidth at all costs. You need to preserve your energy for making high level decisions. You should not be doing, as they say, the €10 tasks, $10 tasks, the $100 tasks. You need to delegate as much of the low value tasks as you possibly can. And a lot of those low value tasks, like general admin tasks, bookkeeping tasks, so on and so forth, they are all essential tasks that need to be carried out within a business, but they don't drive the business forward. But if they're not done, the business will fall apart. So they're not high value tasks, but they are important. So you might find that, right, there's a certain exercise that I do with every member that joins the Delegation Bootcamp program, and it's called a task and time tracking exercise. Ultimately, what it is we get you to sit down and fill out a sheet. Where is your time getting spent each week? So write down every single task that you as the owner are currently responsible for. Beside that, identify which department that falls under. So if it's making sales calls, it falls under sales department. If it's generating marketing content or taking pictures for the marketing team or posting on your social medias, that'll fall under marketing. If it's doing VAT returns and payroll, it falls under accounting. Okay. So once you have that list made out and you've identified which department, beside that, then just write down how many hours per week each of those tasks takes up of your time. And that's going to help you see, right, I'm spending 5 hours a week bookkeeping. I'm spending 15 hours a week on the tools. Maybe you're a carpenter, you're actually out there with a hammer banging a nail. You might find that you're on the phone for X amount of hours per week. It's going to help you identify, right, what tasks can be delegated, what department do they fall under. If you have a team in place, you might be able to pass a lot of those tasks onto existing team members. And if you don't have a team in place or someone who can take over responsibility of carrying out those tasks, well, then you know who your next hire is going to be. Now, making sure as well that the business is financially healthy enough that if you do need to hire somebody in, that you know you can. But if you're not tracking all of that, if you don't have a bookkeeper in place, you don't have regular cash flow reports, profit and loss reports, you don't know your profit margins, you don't know your cash in the bank, you don't know your free cash flow, how are you supposed to make decisions on hiring or maybe buying more machinery or investing in a new system or a tool? Because if you don't know what you can actually invest into that, you could very easily make a really bad decision. Okay, you could put the business in a poor financial state. So having all of these different bits, it's a whole ecosystem, guys. Systemizing a business is everything from KPIs, SOPs, role profiles, building a team, building culture, a strong positive culture, making sure that your financials are tracked. Like I was saying at the start of this video, you'll have your financial dashboard, you have your operations dashboard. They're the two main things that you need to keep the business on track. 9 times out of 10, the business owner is the biggest bottleneck within the business. And until you remove yourself from that situation, remove yourself from different roles and different responsibilities within the business, when you do that, your business, not only will it run better, because right now you're wearing multiple hats and you're spread too thin. When you put somebody in place whose specific role is just to manage that one role or that one task, it's going to be done to a higher standard. So when you step back, the business will run better. It'll most likely be more profitable. It'll be healthier. You'll be able to scale it. You'll be able to step back. You'll have more free time. You'll have more peace of mind, but also you'll have a sellable business. If this sounds like you, make sure to check out systemsanddelegation.com.